it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. Hey, it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. And we are back with, I actually have lost count on how many times he's joined me at this point. Oh, it's 3? This is only 3?
It's only 3.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, that is the Ultrarunner 80/20 enthusiast, book reader, still animal rescue advocate. Wow, this is a terrible intro. Yeah. I definitely had more earlier today. It's my dad. Hi.
Hi. Hey, T. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I got to say Tori, too, because T, you already have Coach T on, and she's also been on 3 times. So I'm only trying to play catch up with her.
I know. She's the best. I'm sure she's not listening right now. But Coach T, if you are, hi, we love you. And she actually, for people who are Coach T fans, check out her Instagram because she is doing a free, like, I don't want to say intro to running, but it's like a free running workshop kind of thing for people. So definitely check that out for anybody who either knows Coach T, likes the Coach T episodes, or just wants to get more running info. Good plug.
Yeah, no, she's awesome. Yeah, I actually just listened to her again the other day. I was in my car and it sort of looped back in. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'd sort of forgotten some of the stuff she talked about.
Yeah, so fun. And everybody keep your eyes peeled because she is an Olympic development athlete. So I think we're coming up on time to start seeing those kinds of events happening. So let's watch for her in the triple jump, I believe.
Okay. Yep. Triple jump. That's what I recall saying.
Yes. And I could be totally wrong on if that's actually accurate still, but that is the last time we talked, that was what she was saying.
Yeah. Maybe she transitioned to something else.
Because I know she does some other stuff too, but maybe I'll have to check in. All right. Anyway, so.
By the way, last thing on her, I thought she was great last time because she was really candid about her mental health from a standpoint of just needing a break and taking some time off and thinking about things. I thought that was really relevant with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes. No. And you know what? She's so great because obviously she's a coach for people, not just like in fitness, but in just like wanting to achieve goals and stuff. And she really does seem to live by like all of those things of like, she has to take care of herself first. And like anytime you communicate with her, like sometimes she does take a little bit longer to get back to you, but it's always like, I needed a break from, my social media, or I needed a break from emails and I had to do this. And so no, she really does live by all the things she preaches. So yeah, that's super great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, after we've now rambled. So today we're going to continue our book review series, our book club. I still haven't come up with like a cute name for it, but we are going to be reviewing some books that are focused on ultra marathons, because if you didn't know, I don't know how you wouldn't know, we ran an ultra recently, which we are going to talk about. But in our prior podcast about the books, we discussed Born to Run, which was one of the books we talked about, which was a great introduction to the world of ultra running. So this week, we are going to delve into the physical and mental aspect of long distance running, as well as how running has helped the authors recover from loss and despair. Seems pretty deep there. But first, I'm sure there's other things we're going to talk about, but we are going to do a brief update on training. And I wanted to do a little review or kind of like recap, because actually I feel like we haven't really talked too much about the race that we did, because it was like, okay, now we're exhausted, time to go home, drive safe.
Yeah, no,
you're covered, you can walk, that was kind of it, right?
Yeah, when you pulled out, I stayed for like another 10 minutes because I was just sitting there thinking I got to get back out of the car. I got to pack up that cooler one last time, dump the ice out. So yeah, I was tired. I'm ready to go home at that point in time, definitely.
Yeah. So what were your, I guess, like thoughts, how it went, like how, like, how was it for you? Because we also didn't get to, anyone who doesn't know, we did a 12-hour 2-person relay. And so like at one point, the whole time one of us was running. So we really weren't talking to each other at any points either for the whole 12 hours.
Yeah, except for when you walk by and I'm like, "Hey, you want any," or ran by when I want any water, or like, "Nope, I'm set, I'm ready to go." I'm like, one more lap, okay." So yeah, that was just
It
a
was
quick
very brief.
exchange. Yeah, quick, brief exchange, and that was about it. Like, "Okay, you can be ready in like another, 30 minutes." I'm like, "Okay, I'll be ready." Yeah, I thought it was great. I actually loved the event. I mean, it was a really small event, um, but I like the concept. I do think we should try one of these, maybe not in the really near future because we've got other things on our plates. But yeah, I loved it. I like the setup where we could do like you can go out and run 10 miles and then tap, and I can go do 10 miles, and so I did like that setup. I also like took a couple notes. I'm like, I felt like I wasn't prepared for certain things like food. I thought I was all set with food because I brought like a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter and jelly, and I'm like, I'll just make sandwiches in between. I'll have all this extra time. But it was like, as soon as you finished, you're exhausted. You're trying to recover. The bathroom's like, a 10-minute walk away. You come back. I just didn't feel like making a sandwich at that point in time. So it's like, okay, I probably should have made the sandwiches in advance and just had all of my meals sort of prepped ahead of time. That was the only thing I felt like was unprepared for, and it was hot. And that was
Oh
the other
my
thing
God.
that was my recollection too. It was like from the standpoint of like if I remember this thing in 20 years, it'd be like, man, that day was hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to that 10 miles. Like the first 10 miles I did, I'm like, I could not have run at that point in time 10 more. There's no way. I was coming off the course like I am so done right now. It is so hot and humid. I think it was humid too. It was just a really hot and humid day. It felt like you were swimming, not running.
Yeah, no, the heat. I mean, that picture I took of us, so also anybody who runs for Team Run Run, check out the newsletter. There's a picture of us in it. But we are sweaty and you can see like sweat on our faces, on our shirt. And we didn't start yet. That was like the picture I took before we started, and like we're sweaty. And I was like, yeah, that really speaks to how nasty the weather was that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, and it was great. I mean, obviously, well, just to give everyone the results, right? So we ran almost 60 miles collectively. We were at it was 11 o'clock at night, and that was it was a noon to midnight run. So at 11 o'clock, I think I was up to go next, and I was trying to look for a reason to not finish up. So I talked to the sort of the race official. We had already had I think it must have been 7.5 to 10 mile lead at that point over the second place two-person team. So, obviously he said you guys have already won, and the second place team's like, yeah, we're not going to make that up. So we got awarded the official pair of socks, and what was it?
As a
Fan
water
club?
bottle.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right, and a water bottle. So that was the prizes that we got for that. That was great. It was awesome. I had a great time.
Yeah, no, I thought it was super, super fun. Um, yeah,
You were
I
probably a lot,
mean,
you were probably a lot sore the next day. I mean, I've done a bunch of long runs, so for me, and I wasn't pushing this here. I was trying to keep my pace to be more like a casual long run. So I felt like I was okay the next day. Now you were a little bit different story because you haven't done those long runs like that. So
yeah, so that's what's weird about it. So I do think I really like and I'm sure, any race you could run slow, right? I liked that like running slow was a good plan slash like the norm, right? Nobody was like running really fast. So like, that 10 to 11 mile, 10-minute mile range was super comfortable. Because that's usually what I run with the stroller. So like without the stroller, it feels like a pretty nice pace. So that I really liked, but yeah, like you said, I hadn't been training any long runs. It's like shame on me. I got what I deserved. So I think the weird part with all of that was cardiovascularly, I felt good. Like I felt like I could just, I was breathing easy the whole time. I felt like I could keep going. Even at the time, muscle wise, wasn't feeling any fatigue because again, like it was slow, but then like yeah, after that first 7.5 almost, yeah, hips started to hurt. And then that next, I think I ran 10 the next time. And then that was like, yep, hip, knees, IT bands, inflamed, everything's falling apart. And so the rest was kind of just like downhill from there. But I was like, also at this point, damage has been done with like the overuse, undertrained ligaments there, which I expected that to happen. So yeah, so definitely was hurting during, because that was kind of what I thought. Try to adjust my stride a little bit to compensate. Had a few things like work and walking, running kind of worked. Just like getting through it also kind of worked. But yeah, the next 2 or 3 days, anytime I bent my knee was like excruciating pain. And I was surprised about, I had like a lot of quad soreness the next day, which I don't ever get. So I must have just been like running weird to compensate for everything hurting while I was running. But yeah, I mean, lessons learned. Yeah, training actually is important, even if like you're not running fast, right? So like, just like how I said, I felt like I keep going, and it was like not hard for me to do, but because I wasn't used to like those high volumes of miles, I kind of did a number on my body. So yeah, super fun. Would love to do something like that again. Yeah, I have to change my electrolyte drink, because that was the other thing I didn't think of with how hot it was. I really didn't think I was gonna be drinking more than like 2 of them, and God only knows how many electrolyte drinks I drank just to survive the heat. But I feel like it messed up my stomach for like the next like 3 days. I was like not feeling so good. So yeah, that was the only other weird thing. But
Yeah, I didn't even mention hydration, right? Which was like, you brought 2 gallons of water. I brought like a gallon and a half of water, and we were just, I mean, it was probably half over. We're like,
yeah,
we're not getting enough water. We're almost out of water.
it was
Yeah.
5 p.m. when I had just taken a break, I think around 5 or something like that. And yeah, that's when I texted Josh, and I was like, I don't know what time you think you're coming, but like bring lots of water, because we're not even halfway done and we're done our water. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening?
Yeah. Although I will say at the end, I lost my appetite and I lost my desire to drink. So that last like hour or two, I'm like, okay, I thought I was really thirsty before then. So it's not a great sign, I think, that when you sort of lose your appetite and you lose your desire to drink. So you sort of either you pass the point of hydration. I'm not sure what was going on with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's definitely not good. I think that definitely happens to people. I started drinking less, I think, because I also was then like confused by not sweating anymore once like the sun went down and it wasn't as hot. But yeah, when I went home, I think I crushed like a whole bowl of raviolis at like 1 a.m. Yeah, it was gross. But yeah, no, that was super fun. Okay, so real quick, now I'm like, we're already, 15 minutes in and we're still talking about this. Um
Well, I'll be fast on the book review. So
well, right, because I haven't
this is
read
what
any
the
of the
purpose
books.
we're here
So.
for. But I'll be quick, but clear.
You came here for this, but we're just gonna keep talking about our own stuff instead. Okay, so I'm training now, well, to recover, because I'm still like, can't run more than a quarter mile without pain. So that'll be a fun journey. But we are gonna do a mid-September half, right? And then
Yep.
a November marathon, Thanksgiving week, I believe, marathon. You are doing a full marathon in a month, less than a month.
Yeah, 4 weeks. August 27th. So
Okay,
yeah,
so yeah, a month.
yeah, so I'm a little, I say worried. I don't know if worry is the right word, but yeah, the other ones I've done recently, I felt like, I haven't been pushing myself that hard in the race to
Mm-hmm.
where I had the risk of sort of not finishing.
Right.
This year, I'm planning to race this one, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll let you
Feeling
know how it
good.
goes.
Yeah, feeling good. You got your speed workouts in.
Yeah, yeah. I kept my training. I did go a little easy the following week after the ultra we did.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm right back on where I was. 10 on Monday, 5 to 7 on Tuesday. Supposed to do a long run tomorrow. We'll see.
All
I was
right.
supposed to do it today, but I had to go see Matt today. So I shouldn't
Okay.
say had to. I went to see Matt today,
Yeah.
though.
I had to
This
see
is
my
my
kids.
son and his son. I had to see my grandson. So
Yeah. How fun.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, get that long run in. And then you are gonna taper for this race, right?
I
So
will. Yeah, I'll
3.
taper for this one. I think. Yeah, we'll have to talk a little bit about what the right taper looks like. 1 week, 2 weeks, how we lead into that.
Well,
So.
it should be 3, but I put on your calendar 2
Okay.
because of how things have been going with
Yeah.
timing and everything. Yeah, we'll chat about it. Okay, anyway, enough with that boring stuff.
Yes. Next.
Hi, everybody. Just listen to us having a phone conversation.
Shall we get into book reviews?
Okay, let's get into book reviews. So, do you want to tell us all the books that you read? Because I read half of one book.
Yeah, I'll and again, as I always say, I use the word read loosely. I did read the first book on the list, and I listened to the other three books, and that does make a difference in the experience sometimes, depending on the type of book it is. So the four books we're going to cover that are all, I guess, ultra running related is The Rise of Ultrarunners, and that's by Adironand Finn. I think I butchered his first name, but that's okay. Um, the overall rating on Goodread is 4.38, and these are also ranked in the way I sort of have put them myself too. So I have that one as my top ultra running book, other than Born to Run. Um, the next book that we're going to cover, so that's the only one written. He's a journalist slash, I guess, author who had run marathons. So he was this book, and we'll get into some of the reviews. We'll talk a little bit about this. Is his experience over the sort of a 2-year window of training for ultras, going into some of these qualifying ultras for the UTMB, and we'll get into what that is in a minute. But the book's written from his perspective and is really about him introducing individuals and various ultra marathons globally. And I learned a ton from the book. The next three books really are all written by former high level ultra marathon runners. Scott Jurek, probably the most decorated U.S. Ultra marathoner. Dean Karnazes, who probably the most media published ultra marathon individual. We'll get into him. His book is called Ultramarathon Man. And then Marshall Ulrich. He's a little bit older. He's 72 now. But this is his exploits back in like 2008 range. And it's titled Running on Empty. So the way I'm going to do this tour is just I'm going to read some of the reviews that I got off a Goodread, and I picked these out because of the information they conveyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they sort of captured what I was experiencing when I read the book. So I'll start with Danny Schiff's 5-star rating of um, the Rise of the Ultrarunners. All right, first book. Author Finn not only races everything from UTMB, the Super Bowl of endurance racing, to a track ultra, to races in the US and the Middle East. He meets with professional runners, sharing topics ranging from sponsorship, FKTs, which is fastest known time, and Strava. But part of this book that which distinguishes itself is the deep dive into some of the deeper questions surrounding such an all-encompassing hobby, sport / obsession. Questions explored like, does happiness need to be earned through struggle? Do we pursue suffering so that we can appreciate the victories in our everyday lives and know that we are tough enough to confront them? Is too much running bad for our health? Why Kenyans, the world's greatest marathon runners, know to listen to their bodies when they are hurt, while the best ultra marathoners will ignore the pain to get to the finish line. So that's his review. It's a 5-star review. He did like the book. There's a lot to unpack there. I picked that one because it does give the listener here sort of a sense of how the book is written. There are a number of people that sort of compare it to Born to Run.
Okay.
That it sort of talks through a lot of different. It goes into some deeper questions, but it's a story, and it's a true story about his experience in trying to get into the UTMB. And again, as I reference here, it's the Super Bowl of ultra running, right? So it's basically through France, Italy, and Switzerland, mountain ranges. So it is the most well-known, at least certainly in Europe. So it is the prestigious run race. And so he was trying to get into that. And to get into that, you got to qualify by doing other races, certain other ones. And so he goes to those. But what he does, for example, Comrades, which is it's called Comrades Marathon, but it's 55 miles in South Africa. It is the history of that race, why the awards are given, what are they named after, So for me, as a as someone who's not hasn't been that familiar with ultra marathons, it was a great book, and so I love the book because it did provide me a lot of good information. Not everyone loved it. Let me read you a couple more reviews.
Are these from the not love people?
No, this is still from the love, a little bit.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to mention was he does mention that it's a hobby slash obsession slash sport, and I did think that was interesting use because I wondered, like, is it a sport? And I guess it certainly is a sport, but it's not a sport where people make a living at it, right? There may be some sponsorships, but it does feel more to me akin to a hobby and slash obsession. It does feel people are obsessed with this and it's a hobby because there's not a whole lot of prize money, if any, in most of these races. These are for an award, for a belt buckle, for you might again get sponsorship, but you're not winning prize money, which you would for like the London Marathon or any of the high profile marathons.
Yeah, no, that's so true. It definitely, there is like a distinction. We were actually just recently talking about even just like the drug testing and different kinds of like ways it's regulated and how that's way more laxed in like the ultra running community as well. So yeah, that is kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and it's not the most diverse probably sport either, I'll say, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what, Finn was getting at to some degree is, why aren't the Kenyans, who are the best probably long distance runners in the world, dominating this sport? And it's not to spoil a little bit of the surprise, but it's not really a surprise. It's they choose not to do these because there isn't prize money. There isn't a way to make a living by doing these long distance runs. Plus, there is a high degree of risk for injury for them, and their livelihood is running these marathons where they can win prize money. So that's more life changing to them than these ultra marathons. That seemed to be the side he was coming out on, but he did certainly explore it and try to get a few of the Kenyan runners to come and compete in some of the big events.
Oh, cool.
Um, Letitia Moffat, 5-star review, just basically said, Finn is a terrific writer, and there's enough of interest here for any reader, whether you run or not. And again, I felt the same. It's interesting if you like knowledge, if you want to understand a part of a world that maybe you're not familiar with. He does a great job of introducing you to a lot of the key athletes through interviews with them, and not just like a topic, but like he'll go to their house in Colorado and spend 3 days with them and talk about his entire experience with these athletes. So you get to know them a little bit more people versus just runners.
Oh, cool.
All right. Louise Patterson, 5 stars. Maybe I only like this book because I recently got into ultra running, but I thought the book was excellent. My favorite running book to date, similar structure to Born to Run, in that it layered history of the sport with stories from stars, all while the author pursues personal endeavors. 10 out of 10 recommendation. Charlie gave it 1 star.
Oh no, Charlie.
Yeah, and actually, it's actually Sherry.
Oh, geez. Just respect to Sherry. Get her name
Yes,
wrong. 1 star
yeah.
review.
Maybe she doesn't want to be quoted on this one, but anyway, yawn.
Oh, geez.
I initially was excited to read this book about ultra running, but this is another middle-aged white guy writing race reports. Race reports can be helpful when you want to run a race, when you want to run a race well, when you first start doing ultras. I could see newbie runners and wannabe ultras finding this fascinating, but I couldn't finish this one.
Yikes.
Yeah, so that was a little bit of a dig. And then maybe I'm a newbie, maybe I'm a wannabe, maybe that's why I like the book so much. No, there must be a lot of us because it was rated 4.36 overall. So I'd say there's a lot in that camp. My
Yeah,
own personal review is I really like the book. I gave it 9 thumbs up.
right. Well,
Keeping my own
thumbs rating.
scale, I've converted that to 4.5 stars
Okay.
for this case here. It was not I was not familiar with ultra running, so it was a great introduction to the sport, to many of the big races and many of the top athletes. So, besides Scott Jurek, I hadn't really heard of too many of the more global ones, and he gave great introductions to them as well. So that's my
Yeah.
review of that one. So, by the way, since I said I read that one, hard copy, I know you just
Oh,
gave me Born to Run. I'm going to exchange this one now with you, so you can now read this one hard copy.
okay.
All right.
Deal.
Okay.
What were some of the standout, besides Scott Jurek, you said, people he interviewed? Anybody like that stuck out?
Certainly Jim Walmsley is one of the ones that's referenced. It's a lot of the people that are in the UTMB races that are in the top
Mhm.
versions of that. And by the way, so I don't know if I can remember all of their names because I was not familiar with them to start with. Um, but yeah, so he certainly interviewed him as one. But there were a lot of the top athletes that he talked to or talked about in the process. So it was good.
I like it. All right,
All
cool.
right. Let's go to, if you don't mind, if you're ready to, we'll go to Scott Jurek's book. His book is Eat and Run, My Unlikely Journey to Ultramarathon Greatness. All right. And again, the setup of that book, based on the title, is he's a vegan. Well, I'll read the review and you'll give you a little bit of sense of how that all came about. But the book is about healthy eating and his running. So it's a little bit of his life story because those two things come together. So Safatra gave it five stars. Eat and Run is a memoir by the famous ultramarathoner Scott Jurek. It starts with his life growing up in Minnesota, with his meat and potatoes family, taking care of his siblings in the house with his father worked two shifts and his mother was increasingly debilitated with MS. It follows him through high school and college, where he starts to discover his love for running and his love for plants and whole grains, and then dives into his adult life on how he won the first Western States 100 race, and as well as numerous others. I think he won Western States like 7 consecutive times. Weaved into the story are his personal vegan recipes, running tips, scientific factoids about nutrition, running, and health. He also provides small dose of history of various foods and running topics. Um, so again, she definitely liked the book. I think the things I took away from that and that are key in the book is, and maybe it's sort of a little bit of revisionist history, but it seems like there's a lot of individuals who have something in the past. His mother was struggling with MS, which ultimately took her life. I don't know whether when you end up becoming someone like Scott Jurek, do you end up looking back and does everyone have one of those types of events in their lives that they look back to and say that's one of the things that helped carry through? Obviously, I've lost my mother, my father, my sister. If I was a great ultra runner, would I? And I certainly during runs think about them. Maybe that's just part of the fuel that everyone takes from those types of things. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's one of the ones that was in the book that sort of came through is a big impact on his life. Marissa, 5-star review. After reading Born to Run, I always had a fascination with Scott Jurek, and I've wanted to read this for a while. It was a great read, and he is truly the man, all caps and exclamation points. So inspiring. I did think the book was inspiring. It, and I think we probably said it before, but Scott Jurek was the ultra runner who did go down to the Copper Canyons to with the Tahamara to race them as part of Born to Run. So he was a key part of that book. La Petite Américaine gave it 1 star. I'm Scott Jurek. I'm so great. I'm a vegan. I'm Scott Jurek. I'm so great. I'm a vegan. By the way, I've cut out the other 7 or 8 times that the person said that before they then got into, look, I like Scott Jurek. We all do. He's a great runner and he seems like a really nice guy, but you'll need the willpower of an ultra marathoner to get through this one. And getting to the last page will probably feel like crossing the finish line in a 100-mile ultra too. I just wanted to give people the contrary view. There were people who didn't like it. Um, I'll read you here's my review of the book, right?
Okay.
I thought Scott came off as likable and humble, which is hard to do when you've won that many races, to be perfectly honest. He is the best U.S. ultra runner that has, at this point in time, in our history. He is a vegan, and the book has a vegan recipe at the end of each chapter, and many of those sounded good to me as a meat eater. I did not think he was incredibly preachy about being a vegan, but he was a little. That seems to turn people off quickly, but not me. I gave it 8 thumbs up, which is 4 stars on this scale. So
Woo!
that's my review. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. He does, as it said here, like seems like a really likable guy. He doesn't come off as arrogant, cocky, although the one person did say, I'm Scott Jurek, I'm great, I'm a vegan. I did find that the people who love the book and my review of the reviews, a lot of them reference vegan, and many of them were vegetarian or vegan. And some of the ones that gave the book a bad rating were really turned off by that concept too. So, I mean, I get it. I didn't feel like he was that preachy, but it is something he's passionate about. And so it comes across, it comes out. And when you're listening to this book, it does sometimes feel a little odd because you're listening to a chapter, and then suddenly it'll just say like, um, tofu tacos, and it'll start reading. I'm sure in the book it's just a copy of a recipe, but when an audio book, they're reading out every ingredient and like, okay, I get it. So it's probably a better one to physically read than maybe listen to.
Did you try any of the recipes yet? Probably not.
I won't say I tried them fully, but no, I certainly I grabbed a bunch of corn tortillas. I've probably eaten now 24, 48, over 50 corn tortillas since we did the ultra.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, they're the small ones,
Yeah,
but
they are little. Corn tortillas are always tiny.
yeah. So that seems like I've added that to and that was one of the things that was referenced in his in one of his recipes. I'm like, you know what, I could almost make like those tacos like nonstop. So I've been eating a ton of like tacos.
Yeah, I did that after I read Born to Run the first time. I was like, if I just only eat like tacos for the rest of my life, like maybe I'll be really good at running. And I think I
Yeah.
did it for a couple months, probably not that long, but yeah, no, that's so funny. Well, vegan is kind of one of those things too. It's like CrossFit, right? You do it, you're into it, you find a way, even today. So, Maria does CrossFit. Love Maria. Hi, Maria, if you're listening. But we're all hanging out and playing with the kids. And I think I said we were crawling up a hill. We're doing like bear crawls or whatever. And she's like, speaking of bear crawls, CrossFit, the games are in a week. And I was like, we have to, right? You can't
Yeah.
just you can't
It
not
leaks
talk
out.
about it.
No, but like something that you're that passionate about, it becomes a little bit almost like a religion that it just comes out. Like again, I'm not offended by it. I'm not turned off by it. I think it's fine, but I do understand people are.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So that's so
That was
again,
a good one.
I'll put in again those two I put into one category. The next two, so for all of those people who think I don't dislike any books, you're
Here
about
we
to
go.
find 2 books I didn't like, and didn't like's a strong term. So the third book, The Ultramarathon Man, is Dean Karnazes. The overall good read rating was 4.01. And by the way, Scott Jurek's book was only 4.02. So I just had completely different reactions to Dean's book versus Scott's. I picked a number of 1-star reviews for Dean just because I didn't like the book. So here's Fuzzy Gertie's 1-star review. This book starts with Dean's early running years and then his rediscovery of distance running after his 30th birthday sparked middle-age crisis moment. The book also covers his first time at Western States endurance run, a 100-miler, a failed attempt at the Badwater 135, which he did later go on to win, a race expedition to the South Pole, and a solo run at the Relay, which is a 200-miler, usually run by teams. He's not the most decorated of ultra runners, but he is perhaps the most self-promoting. I can't dispute his accomplishments, but there's something about his self-aggrandizing tone that really rubs me the wrong way. That's a theme you're going to hear a number of times. Joey's 1-star rating. Geez, Karnazes, love yourself much? Ugh, this book was dripping with ego and vanity that I had to shower after each chapter. The author's narrative style is to drop outrageous claims of training and competitive feats of endurance in a matter-of-fact sort of way, as if to say, really such feats mean nothing to me at all. but I am sure you little people will find tales of my exploits wildly amazing and totally entertaining. This book is awful. Hard pass on this one. Recommended to no one.
Wow. Okay, I
Joey
didn't
was not a fan.
no, not a fan. I didn't
No.
read this book. Well, surprise, surprise, I didn't read like any of them. But um and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but like if you're writing a book about yourself, like it you kind of have to be to some extent like you're talking about yourself, right? Which
Yeah.
is like can be really hard for some people. But if you're writing a book about yourself, like you have to actually write about yourself, right? Am I like
No, you're
misunderstanding?
not wrong. I think what's here is the difference is, I guess, is Scott Jurek can write about himself and not sort of like talk about his body fat percentage and how his biceps and how he was on these shows and they all thought he was hot
Oh.
and I think the other thing that was that rubbed me the wrong way was every story felt embellished. So it's
Oh.
like yeah, so it's like he has this encounter with someone at the Taco Bell, and like the way he tells the story, it goes on for pages and pages, and it's like it just sounds like as you're reading it and you're picturing it, it just sounds like something that really didn't happen that way, and he's sort of changed the facts a little bit to make it sound better, and and it's like it just doesn't work. Like it just feels false.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so and his some of his modesty feels like, false modesty. So, like so and that seems like the theme that you're gonna hear a lot about this. That was the first review. I read
Okay.
that one because I think it gave you a little bit of sense of the book itself. The book is about a number of the ultra running experiences that he had. And I will say, when we come to a moment, he did do a good job in some areas. So Anne Savage gave it a 1 star. I'm not going to read all the trashing that she did on it, but she did pick out a part that I thought was relevant. Where this book shines is in the description of the races themselves. The writing about running is good enough to put you into the 100-mile or 200-mile treks with him and feel the taste of what it's like to endure something that brutal. So, unlike Scott's um, book, you seem like you'd almost glanced over some of the races that like talked about this race in a little bit of detail, but then like 3 other races go by, you don't hear really much about them. Where Dean, it went on for chapters, like an individual race would go on for so long, and you did feel like the amount of pain he was going through because he did describe it in an in-depth process. Now, I don't know whether it was intentional because I think it feels like based on the reviews, maybe he's just painting himself like, look how hard this is. It's like I can't get up, I can't move, but he always managed to
But
get
I
up
did it right.
and go the next mile. It's like I'm never gonna finish. They're gonna call it now, and it's like I got up off the mat and I went on again. So it was just kind of like that stuff. Um, Again, it rubbed me the wrong way, and it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But I did feel like that's one thing in the book that I did take from it was his descriptions of the events. You did sort of feel the amount of pain that he was going through in that process. Sarah Hanley, 1 star. This book is hard to finish. Beyond the author's huge ego, false modesty, and utter terrible writing, I didn't learn anything from anything that I could use in my own ultras. Um, Really baffled by all the positive reviews. I feel bad writing such a negative one. But wow, this is a dog of a book. No doubt Dean Karnazes is a incredible athlete, but a humble one and a writer, he is not.
Yikes. People
It's
hate
almost
this
like
book.
it's almost like a Yoda moment. Humble one and writer, he is not.
That does sound like Yoda.
Yeah. Emily, 1 star. Feels weird to criticize an autobiography by an athlete as feeling self-important, but there you go. Also, my main takeaway was that Dean Karnazes was a man who thinks sending a tampon to a friend is a funny joke. Good grief.
Is he sexist too? Is that what that means?
I think that's what that means. I think one of his maybe friends didn't do well in one of the races, and he sent a tampon to him,
Oh Lord.
implying like, "Oh, you're a woman," like kind of
Oh
thing.
yeah, because women don't
Oh,
dominate
no, women can't
ultras.
compete. Women can't compete. Although There's a lot of great women out there. And by the way, I have to also apologize to you and all women right now because we did 4 books that were not about women ultra runners. I will say I tried to when I ran the list, it was like, hey, give me the top 10 books on ultra running. They were all male, so women are
Yeah.
underrepresented because there are. I did watch a documentary on Courtney Dahlwalter.
To Walter, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. She's
Courtney,
unbelievable.
write a book. I think she,
Yeah, write a
I don't know
book,
if she
man.
did.
She hasn't already. She needs to write one. I
We'll
couldn't
have to
find
check.
a couple of the other reviews. Marty, 1 star. This guy still does. I'm sorry. The stuff this guy does is all pretty awesome, but he's way too full of himself, and it ruins the book. Darla, 1 star. Stick to running, dude.
Oh no.
Steve, 1 star. What a self-serving ding dong.
Yikes.
Yeah. And then the last couple things I had was on his own Wikipedia page. Um, here's the criticism of Dean. Dean's achievements have been derided among some runners as tainted by hyperbole, and that his fame is primarily due to self-promotion in the media rather than top athletic performance. The president of the American Ultra Running Association noted that he is not even in the top 10 of runners. Former elite runner Weldon Johnson said Dean's biggest accomplishment is not running, but in marketing. Ultra runner John Morlock defended Dean, but also noted Carnassus was very good, not great. He's not a racer, just a very good performer. That's the guy defending him. Last thing on Dean before I do my own review. On August 12th, this is also in Wikipedia. On August 12th, 2022, Carnassus claimed in an Instagram video that he had been attacked by a coyote during a race in the Marin Headlands. National Park Service rangers noted that his story did not match biologists' understanding of coyote behavior, and that his injuries appeared to have been sustained from a fall rather than an animal attack.
Oh my gosh.
They're
Okay.
basically calling him a liar.
Right. Yikes.
Yeah, and in Wikipedia, although again, Wikipedia, you can love it or hate it. My
Who's
review is if you get bothered by someone who seems to be bragging all the time about themselves, then do not read this book. If it doesn't bother you, if it doesn't rub you the wrong way, and you're able to block that out, it's not that bad. Overall, I would say it's 4 thumbs up / 2 stars. So I
not
can't
your
say
fave?
I didn't hate the book. I did. I didn't like him, which is
Okay.
tough. You read a book about somebody and you don't like the individual. It's like this guy's a real. He just strikes you as one of those guys.
Yeah. Well, Dean, send me your book and I'll defend you. No, just kidding, because he's ever gonna hear this, right? My dad
Well,
hates you, but if you send me the book, I might like you.
yeah, yes. And then the book that you were reading during the
Yes.
ultra, listening to during the ultra, number 4, Running on Empty, Ultramarathoners Story of Love, Loss, and Record-Setting Run Across America, Marshall Ulrich. Overall rating on Goodread, 3.76, with 2,400 different ratings. Few ones. Here's a 5-star review from Tina Ann McGuyan. This book is about Ulrich's experience in running across America in 2008. He was already an accomplished ultra marathon runner, and this challenge tested his limits and his capabilities. Readers will appreciate the planning involved in running a 3,000-mile race. Ulrich also encountered his demons from his younger years and finds salvation in his personal life while on the road. So that's a positive review. No, there were people who, again, overall rating 3.76. There were a number of people who liked it. Certainly more liked it than didn't. Tim didn't fall into that category. Tim gave it 1 star. I feel a little bit like I was misled by this book. The cover looks very similar to Christopher McDougall's wonderful Born to Run book, with the same colors and the similar layout. McDougall's name is on the front because he wrote a foreword. But where McDougall gave us a wonderful exploration of running exceptionally long distances. In Ulrich's book, we get an exploration of Ulrich, who, how can I put this nicely, comes across equally as narcissistic and vindictive jerk. I'm not generally a person who seeks to judge people on their life choices, but Ulrich's book kind of forces the reader into that position. There are a lot of great books out there about running. This is not one of them.
Oh no. Tim.
Yeah. And the next one will come into Dan Ward, 1 star. This book should really be called A Selfish Jerk Tries to Ruin His Fourth Marriage Through Running.
Well, that's kind of what I said.
Yeah. And it says, I picked up this book because I loved to run, but was flabbergasted at how selfish and self-serving the author was. He achieves his goals, but hopefully this book is a cautionary tale on letting your hobbies take over your life and cost your family relationships. Because it was clear in the book, like it was like, oh, he was in this relationship, he gets divorced, he gets divorced, he gets divorced. So it was, you think he was on his fourth relationship. And his Run Across America, which is a big part of what his book is about. I mean, it's an incredible accomplishment. You're talking about running for X number of days, whether it be 2 months or more or less, from that. You're running 60 to 70 miles a day. So an incredible feat. But again, this didn't come off as much as a likable guy. There was some tragedy, as you know, from the beginning of the book. Right? His first wife, he didn't get divorced. His first wife passed away. So there was some tragedy in his life too, and that's actually when he started running, was when that was ongoing. That's probably where you were in the book when you texted me during the run and said, this book is so sad, I can't read it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was that part, and he's talking about having to plan to raise his like toddler age daughter without his
Yeah.
wife because she's dying, and I was like, yeah, nope, I'm sad, can't read this or
No, that's
listen
not
to
something,
this.
not uplifting enough to anything. So my review is, I'd put this in the same box as Dean's. I definitely did. It did not rub me the wrong way as much as Dean's did, but there are definitely better books out there about running. So for that, it gets 4 thumbs up / 2 stars from me. But again, if I was gonna, rank them, I did think that Dean's was a little more annoying in his personality. It came through. So versus Marshall.
Yeah,
So
um, yeah, I probably didn't get far enough. I mean, I definitely felt the same way as some of these people where it's like, oh, this is just a book about how this guy ruined his life by running, which I just like don't love that narrative. But yeah, I mean, I also don't really, I don't know, I always give people the benefit of the doubt with like, I'm like, oh, what kind of trauma have they been through that's making them so annoying and self-important? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
so
There's a lot to be learned from any book like that. I do think, like I said, I don't recommend them because I think there's better ones out there. But if you want to read about ultra running, these two guys, certainly Scott, clearly, but Dean and Marshall, again, both had something to contribute in reading their books. I think you would learn something. I think you would get something from it. Again, it's just probably there are other books out there about other subjects related to running that might be better.
yeah. So of the four, which one resonated with you the most since we are kind of on our ultra kick right now?
Yeah, I have to say Scott's. I mean, I can say that again, he's a much more likable character, maybe because I went into it liking him because of his record and what I knew a little bit about him. But yeah, certainly trying to increase my eating habits, right? So taking a little bit of sugar out of my diet. I'm not going vegan. I mean, that's way too extreme for me. But could I eat better than I do? Yeah. I mean, do I eat better than most people? Probably do, but
Yeah.
there's still a long way to go. I mean, there's a lot more you can do. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's probably had the most impact. The other two, again, incredible accomplishments. Like as far as like again, running 200 miles solo, which is what Dean did for one of those relays, and running across America for Marshall. When at least when you're doing those long runs or a marathon, and you sort of sit back about how much it hurts, it's like, yeah, is it enough to make you stop? I mean, can you go on? You probably can. you probably, it goes back to the Goggins concept of most people tap out at 40% of their potential. And that's just your mind screaming to protect you because it doesn't want you to get anywhere near 100%. And it just stops you at 40%. So, just trying to work your way past those things is important. So yeah, I took some stuff like that from it.
Yeah. Well, and then you kind of already brought this up too with talking about, I think with Scott's book of like, his mom with MS and helping raise his family because his dad had to work a lot. And that's been something we talked about in the last book review. And I even talked about that prior when I talked to Rachel Clark about addiction, but, people with some kind of tough past trauma growing up, those kinds of things. Can you talk a little bit about that in all the books? Because I know you brought up with Scott.
Yeah.
I sort of mentioned it with, why Marshall Ulrich is the way that he is. But
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, like Rise of the Ultrarrunners. He one of the people he talks to, I don't recall her name, but she was a recovering addict. And she talked about just how going out on those long runs, gave her again, a feeling of high that she loved. Again, not the same type of high that she was getting as an addict, but again, it was just a great tool for recovery, and that became her new obsession. And it, certainly, and again, I certainly, although I trashed his book a little bit with Marshall, but we talked about someone losing their wife to cancer. I mean, it's devastating. I don't know what people would do, and so he gets a pass, right? You get a little bit of a pass for, maybe not writing the best book ever, right? So, but yeah, but it did feel like, Marshall, one of the things that he was using running for was to deal and cope with, like, it started out with, I think, his high blood pressure, was to help with that. And it was the stress that he was going through. Um, so yeah, I do think, Scott seemed like he tapped into that for his loss of his mother. And it does seem like, as I said earlier, it seems like that's a bit of a theme that with a lot of these ultra runners is that they tap into something. You have to find something to tap into, maybe when you're just out there that many hours running. And it's usually tragedy that they gravitate to looking for strength.
yeah, it's gonna be the dumbest comparison here, but I'm gonna do it anyway because it always pops into my head when we talk about this. So I'm a Survivor fan, right? Love Survivor. Tyson, right, is one of my favorite
Yep.
Survivor people. I believe it was him, was talking, someone's asking him questions about Survivor and casting all these things, and talking about how everybody on the show, especially now, like seems to have like a why, right? They're on there, I'm on Survivor because my mom, or because of my kids, or because of this happened to me, all these things. They're like, is it just those kinds of people that are on the show? And I believe this was Tyson, it could have been somebody else, but was saying like anybody's going to have, something. So like they're going to ask you, and everyone's going to have a why. It's just how you explain it. Is it turns into a story. It has a reason. It now has meaning, so it might not compare to someone else's tragedy, or it might not even be a tragedy, but like you have your reason. They're going to make it into a story. You're going to have this whole reason. So that kind of, I guess, probably discredits like
Yeah.
people's things, but it's just kind of interesting. It's like, yeah, if someone asks you why you do it, you're going to have a why. And these people all seem to have just like a very large story, or big event or something, but
Yeah.
anybody might have a thing.
No, it's a great question because, as you said that, I was thinking, yeah, which one happens first? Is it you become on long runs? You have a lot of time to think, right? If you're not a music listen to or a book listen to person like myself, you have a lot of time on your hands and in your mind. And as I said, when you're in an uncomfortable place, you have to dig down for some strength. And maybe people just reach for that stuff. And maybe the running isn't the result of the tragedy. Maybe the tragedy is what they've gravitated to for the strength, because they are running. So maybe it's the chicken versus the egg. I'm not sure which one happens first. I don't know that the tragedy caused them to be a great long distance runner, but it may be they're a great long distance runner, and therefore they gravitate back to something for strength. So yeah, it's an
Yeah.
interesting question.
I'm going to butcher this research too, which I also reference this a lot, and I probably should actually read and remind myself exactly what it is. But another podcast, it might have been Trail Runner Nation, years ago, interviewed some, psychologist or researcher or something, but talking about the link between like mental health diagnoses and especially endurance runners. And, there's a high correlation of if you're a runner, you have some kind of diagnosis, right? So that's like the question of, does running cause mental illness or,
Yeah.
and it's like, I believe what they were finding was, and again, I apologize to everyone in the world that I'm getting this wrong or butchering the science here, but I believe they were just finding that like this type of person is more prone to having some kind of mental illness. Typically I think they were seeing like anxiety, OCD, ADHD types of behaviors, maybe depression as well. They also often finding running. So it's not like there's no actual real causation there. There just happens to be a correlation of like this personality type has these things, but also ends up being runners too. So it's just kind of interesting too, is like, what's all kind of intersecting that way as well.
Yeah, you're right. You nailed it with causation or correlation, right? Which is which? Right? Which is what is the causation of the great running? So yeah, so I think all of the books touch on that a little bit. You know, I'd say all four books. There's always a why, and some of that has to do with tragedy. Dean's a little bit less clear, maybe, than in my mind than the other ones, but certainly Scott, Adaran Finn, and his referencing some of the runners, as well as Marshall. I think there's a clear why there.
Yeah. And then because I know we talked about this too with Born to Run, especially of like there were so many characters that you were able to love when reading that story. Actually, weird, funny, totally not even like that super related, but when I first started the podcast and I was just looking for runners who are just like, everyday runner, people who wanted to be interviewed for the show, I had Dr. Alex Luck Barnett on the show. She's married to Billy from Born to Run.
No way.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
reach out to them, because one of the things I was reading when I was researching for this discussion tonight was when in Scott Jurick's book he references that he got divorced from his first wife, and he just it was really just a sentence or two that just said like got divorced, his wife said she didn't think he was funny anymore or fun or funny, and found somebody else that she was in love with. It's just like that was it. And then so one of the other book reviews I was reading was like they didn't mention that his wife ran off with Barefoot Ted.
Oh my
God. So I'm like, all right, is that real or not real? And it was a few places on the internet, but you got to. I was a little skeptical still, because once something's out there, it gets repeated on the internet multiple times.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a little bit of a like too close to home. Like it's like, oh my God, that's crazy how Barefoot Ted, because they were friends, I guess, afterwards. That Scott and Barefoot Ted were friends afterwards. So I guess there was a that he was around the family a lot, and that's supposedly what happened.
Oh my gosh.
So you can now you can find out whether that's true or not.
Yeah, I'll have to. I know. I just was thinking, I'm like, I didn't know to ask her that, but it's like, yeah, are you married to a famous ultra runner? Because no, but when you're reading Born to Run 2, you'll see she's in the book.
Oh, is she? Okay.
That's what I figured out. I was like, oh my gosh, I know her sort of. I interviewed her. Crazy.
That's crazy.
But yeah, actually I didn't even let you answer the question though. I just talked about it.
And what was the question?
Right. Interesting characters from any of these books.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I would say that that Scott's, I would say Dean and Marshall both didn't develop too many characters. They were so focused on themselves. Again, naturally speaking, in Scott's book, he had a best friend named Dusty, who was an interesting character, sort of a rebel from high school, and he seemed like he had a troubled household type of situation, bit of a troublemaker, who was on the ski team with him. So he became a friend throughout his entire, from the most part of his life, until the very end. They sort of, I guess, disconnected. But yeah, he was like his number two guy on a lot of his ultra runs, where he would come and help pace them. In fact, Dusty was the guy who would win, many of the races that they did initially when he was younger. until Scott became, got better and better and better and better. So he was one. And then I think in Adaran and Finn's book, The Rise of the Ultrarunner, again, his interview with a number of different individuals sort of introduce you to different characters. They're pretty high level, though. That's like, a few pages in a book versus being a character like in Born to Run that were there throughout the entire process. But they were interesting individuals. I think that's the only two I would sort of pull out.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on all four of these books?
Yeah, just read them. Read and or listen to them. And again, I use the word loosely, but yeah, read. At least the first two minimum. And there's a number of other ones out there that you can read. So we'll do some more book reviews hopefully in the future.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys liked this new format of the book review. It was a little different than last time. Still trying to test out some things. I think next time we're going to be doing videos, movie content, running wise. So check that out. And then we'll probably switch back to books again. So if you have any book suggestions, everybody, feel free to either email them to me at americyrun@gmail.com, or you can message on the podcast on the Anchor site, or you can find American Run Club on Instagram. Either way, you'll find a way to let us know books to read. We will be also checking out, I don't think we've decided a theme for the books next because we're doing movies next, but I'm sure we'll come up with some kind of theme, but open to suggestions. We already have our movies picked, so no suggestions there, but you can always throw some out and maybe in a couple times from now, we'll check that out. Anything I'm forgetting?
No, you nailed it. That was awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
The time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate all your book knowledge, since you were really carrying the team here on the book front.
Loved it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at americyrrunclub@gmail.com.